Stop scrubbing your cabinets. Right now, whatever you're using, the sponge, the magic eraser, the dish soap and a rag, put it down because you're making the problem worse, not better. Here's what nobody tells you about that sticky yellowish film on your kitchen cabinets. It's not dirt. Dirt comes off with a wet rag in about 10 seconds. What you're looking at is polymerized grease, cooking oil that's been heated into the air, landed on your cabinet doors, and then baked itself into a plastic-like coating every single time you turned on the stove after that. It's not sitting on the surface, it's bonded to it. That's why scrubbing doesn't work. You can put your whole shoulder into it with a sponge and barely make a dent because you're trying to physically abrade something that's chemically stuck. I've walked into homes where the owners spent an entire Saturday on their hands and knees at cabinet level, wore through 2 sponges, and the cabinets looked exactly the same as when they started. Some people even reach for sandpaper at that point. Don't do that. I'll explain why later, but sanding a factory finish is one of the fastest ways to turn a cleaning job into a $3,000 refinishing job. I've been doing this work my whole life. My grandfather ran a commercial cleaning crew, my dad took it over, and I grew up going on jobs with both of them before I ever had a route of my own. Grease-bonded cabinets are one of the most common calls we get, right up there with grout. And the fix isn't muscle, it's chemistry, knowing exactly what breaks that bond without touching the wood finish underneath it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact method we use on real jobs, the one that gets cabinets looking new in about 10 minutes of actual working time. No scrubbing, no sanding, no refinishing. I'll also tell you the 3 mistakes almost everyone makes trying to fix this themselves, mistakes that can permanently dull or strip your cabinet finish if you're not careful. Stick around for that part especially, because it's the part that saves people the most money. The problem. Walk into almost any kitchen that's 5 years old or more and look at the cabinets right above the stove and around the range hood. Then look at the cabinet doors on the far side of the kitchen, away from the cooking area. 9 times out of 10, there's a visible difference. The ones near the stove look darker, duller, almost like they've aged twice as fast. Run your finger along the underside of an upper cabinet near the stove, the part you never really look at, and you'll usually feel a tacky, almost waxy film. That's the same stuff that's on your cabinet doors, just thicker because it's had less handling to wear it down. The reason people don't catch this early is that it doesn't happen in a single event. Nobody spills a pot of grease down their cabinets and notices it that day. It builds in a layer so thin, applied so gradually, that your eye adjusts to it the same way it adjusts to a room getting slowly darker as the sun sets. You see your kitchen every day, so the change from new to dingy happens too slowly for you to register it as change. It just becomes what your kitchen looks like now. What usually triggers people to notice is a side-by-side. They repaint a wall, replace a countertop, or a guest touches a cabinet door and says something. Suddenly the cabinets look old by comparison, even though nothing about them actually changed that day. The buildup was already there, you just had a fresh reference point. By the time most people call a cleaning crew or start searching for a fix online, the grease layer isn't a thin film anymore. It's had months, sometimes years, to keep collecting. Dust sticks to the tacky surface, more grease lands on top of that dust, and it compounds. That's why the fix that would have taken 30 seconds with a damp cloth 2 years ago now takes real technique to undo, and why so many people go straight for something abrasive out of frustration. The buildup earned that reputation for being stubborn. It is stubborn, but it's not permanent, and it's not a wood problem, it's a surface problem, which matters a lot for how you treat it. Why it happens. Every time you cook with oil, searing, sautéing, frying, or even just heating a pan with a little butter in it, some of that oil doesn't stay in the pan. It vaporizes. You can't see it happening because the droplets are microscopic, but they're floating in the air of your kitchen every time heat and oil meet, and they travel farther than people assume. That's why cabinets on the far wall still get a layer, just a lighter one than the cabinets directly above the stove. When those oil droplets land on your cabinet's surface, they don't just sit there like water would. Cooking oil is mostly unsaturated fat, and unsaturated fat reacts with oxygen in the air over time. That reaction is called oxidation, and when it happens to a thin film of oil sitting exposed on a surface, the oil doesn't stay liquid. It slowly hardens and cross-links into a tougher, more plastic-like substance every single time you turned on the stove after that. It's not sitting on the surface, it's bonded to it. That's why scrubbing doesn't work. You can put your whole shoulder into it with a sponge and barely make a dent because you're trying to physically abrade something that's chemically stuck. I've walked into homes where the owners spent an entire Saturday on their hands and knees at cabinet level, wore through 2 sponges, and the cabinets looked exactly the same as when they started. Some people even reach for sandpaper at that point. Don't do that. I'll explain why later, but sanding a factory finish is one of the fastest ways to turn a cleaning job into a $3,000 refinishing job. Heat speeds this up. That's why the cabinets closest to the stove and the range hood filter are always the worst. They're getting hit with more oil particles and more ambient heat, which accelerates the hardening reaction. I've seen the underside of range hood cabinets that had a grease layer thick enough to leave a fingerprint in it, almost like wax. This is also why dish soap alone stops working after a while. Dish soap is built to break down fresh, still liquid grease. Think of how it cuts through the oil on a dinner plate. But once that oil has oxidized and hardened, it's chemically a different substance than the oil you started with. Soap can still help loosen it a little, but it's not designed to break the cross-linked bonds holding hardened grease to a surface. You need something that actually dissolves that bond, not just something that likes to grab onto oil. Common mistakes. Mistake 1. Scrubbing harder instead of dissolving smarter. This is the instinct almost everybody starts with, and I get why. If something's stuck, you want to physically remove it. But hardened grease doesn't respond to friction the way dirt does. What actually happens when you scrub a grease-bonded cabinet with a stiff sponge or a scouring pad is you're dragging an abrasive material across your cabinet's finish, which is usually a thin layer of lacquer, polyurethane, or stain sealant. You might remove a bit of surface grease, but you're also creating thousands of microscopic scratches in that finish. Those scratches don't just dull the shine, they actually give the next layer of airborne grease more surface area to grab onto, so the cabinet gets dirty faster the second time around. I've had customers tell me their cabinets started looking worse within a couple of months of a hard scrubbing, and that's exactly why. Mistake 2. Reaching for a magic eraser or an all-purpose abrasive cleaner. Melamine sponges work by literally sanding the surface at a microscopic level. That's the mechanism, not a metaphor. They're genuinely great on things like scuffed walls or plastic. But on a finished wood cabinet, that same micro-sanding action is stripping a small amount of your finish every time you use it. Do it once, you might not notice. Do it as a regular cleaning habit, which is what people tend to do once they find something that works, and you'll start seeing dull patches, uneven sheen, or even bare spots where the color looks different from the rest of the door. At that point, you're not looking at a cleaning fix anymore. You're looking at refinishing. Mistake 3. Using straight vinegar or an overly acidic cleaner and leaving it on too long. Vinegar has a reputation online as a cure-all, and it does have real cleaning power. Acid can help break down grease, but most cabinet finishes are not built to sit under an acidic liquid for extended time. I've seen vinegar left on cabinet doors to really soak in end up etching the finish, leaving a cloudy or hazy patch that's actually a different texture than the surrounding wood, not just a dirty spot. It's especially bad on cabinets with any kind of waxed or oiled finish, where the acid strips the protective layer along with the grease. If you're going to use anything acidic, it has to be diluted properly, and it can never just sit there. Wipe, don't soak. The pattern in all 3 mistakes is the same. People treat this like a dirt problem that needs force, when it's actually a chemistry problem that needs the right solvent. Force against a hardened, bonded substance just transfers the damage from the grease layer to the finish underneath it. Once that happens, no amount of the right cleaner fixes it. You've changed what you're working with. The solution. Here's the method we actually use, broken into stages. It's simple, but the order and the technique matter more than people expect, so follow it as written the first time before you start improvising. Stage 1. Figure out what you're cleaning. Before anything touches your cabinets, you need to know your finish. Most kitchen cabinets are one of 3 things: painted, stained with a lacquer or polyurethane top coat, or a raw or oiled wood finish that's much less common in modern kitchens. You can usually tell painted from lacquered by touch. Painted cabinets have a slightly softer, more uniform feel, while a lacquered wood finish has more visible grain texture under the sheen. If you genuinely don't know, test in an inconspicuous spot first, the inside edge of a door or the bottom of a cabinet frame near the hinge. That's rule 1 on every job. Test before you commit to the whole kitchen. Stage 2. Mix the solution. You want warm water, not hot. Hot water can actually help re-liquefy a very thin surface layer of grease temporarily, which sounds good, but it also softens some cabinet finishes and adhesives around trim, so warm is the safer, still effective choice. Into that warm water, you're adding a degreaser built for grease, not a general all-purpose cleaner. A simple food-safe dish soap concentrated stronger than normal works in a pinch, but what actually cuts hardened grease fastest is a small amount of a citrus-based degreaser, the kind with D-limonene as an active ingredient. That's the compound extracted from citrus peel oil, and it's genuinely good at breaking down oxidized oil because it's a solvent, not just a surfactant like soap. Mix roughly a tablespoon of a concentrated citrus degreaser per 2 cups of warm water. Don't go stronger than that on a finished cabinet. More isn't faster, it just increases your risk of dulling the sheen. Most people spray a cleaner on and immediately start wiping, and that's the single biggest reason home attempts fail. The solvent needs contact time to actually break down the cross-linked grease bonds. Spray or apply your solution generously to a section of cabinet. Work in sections, not the whole kitchen at once, and let it sit for a full 2 to 3 minutes. Don't let it dry out. If your kitchen is warm, mist it again lightly partway through so it stays wet. This dwell time is doing the actual work. Everything after this is just removal, not cleaning. Stage 4. The no-scrub wipe. After the dwell time, take a microfiber cloth, not a sponge, not a scouring pad, an actual microfiber cloth, and wipe with the grain of the wood using light, even pressure. You should feel the grease coming off almost like you're wiping condensation off a window. If it's not coming off easily, that's a sign it needs more dwell time, not more pressure. Go back to step 3 and let it sit longer rather than pushing harder. This is the part that surprises people most. After years of scrubbing, using almost no pressure at all and getting a cleaner result feels wrong, but it's exactly how it's supposed to go once the chemistry has done its job. For grooves, panel edges, and detail work, the spots where grease collects thickest and a flat cloth can't reach, an old, soft-bristled toothbrush dipped in the same solution works well. Same rule applies. Light pressure, let the solution do the work, don't grind at it. Stage 5. The rinse pass. This step gets skipped constantly, and it's a mistake in its own right. Any cleaner residue left on the cabinet, especially a citrus degreaser, can attract dust and actually leave the surface feeling slightly tacky again within a week or two, undoing your work faster than normal buildup would happen. Take a second microfiber cloth, dampened with plain water only, and go over every section you cleaned. Wring it out well. You want damp, not wet, since standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners, and standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners, and standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners, and standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners, and standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners, and standing water is bad for wood joints and can seep into corners. Stage 6. Dry and buff. Immediately after the rinse pass, dry each section with a clean, dry microfiber cloth. Don't let cabinets air dry, especially around hinges and corners where water can sit and eventually cause the wood to swell or the finish to lift. While you're drying, use a little extra pressure in a circular motion. This is a buffing pass, and it's what brings the shine back. This is the step that makes the difference between clean and looks new, and it takes maybe 30 extra seconds per cabinet. Pro tip. On cabinets that see heavy grease exposure, anything within about 3 feet of your stove, go back once everything is fully dry and apply a very thin coat of a food-safe mineral oil or a cabinet-specific conditioning polish, buffed in with a dry cloth. This isn't about shine, it's about giving the next round of airborne grease something smoother to land on, so it wipes off with a damp cloth instead of bonding to bare finish. My grandfather used to call it feeding the wood. even on finishes where there's technically nothing to feed. The real effect is a temporary barrier layer, and it's the reason some kitchens we service only need this deep clean once a year instead of every few months. One more thing worth knowing. Don't try to do your entire kitchen in one pass if it's been years since a real cleaning. Work zone by zone. Start with the worst area, usually directly above and beside the stove, so you can dial in your dwell time and pressure on the hardest section first. Once you've got a feel for how your specific cabinets respond, the rest of the kitchen goes faster because you already know exactly how long to let the solution sit. Total working time on an average kitchen, once you've got your rhythm, runs about 10 to 15 minutes of actual application and wiping spread across the dwell time in between sections. That's genuinely all it takes once you stop fighting the grease with pressure and start letting the right solvent do what pressure never could. That's the method, start to finish. No sanding, no refinishing, no wasted Saturday on your knees with a sponge. Once you see how easily that buildup comes off with the right dwell time, you'll never go back to scrubbing. If your kitchen's got a spot that's giving you trouble beyond just the cabinets, maybe it's the grout between your backsplash tile or that stainless steel that never seems to stay streak-free, drop it in the comments. I read through these, and a lot of the videos on this channel started as answers to exactly that kind of question. If this saved your cabinets or your Saturday, go ahead and subscribe. I put up a new video every week, usually built around whatever's coming up the most in real jobs that week. And if you're dealing with hard water spots or buildup on your faucets and sink fixtures, I've got a full video on that. Same idea, wrong tool for the job is usually the reason it's not working, and the right fix takes a fraction of the effort. Worth a watch if that's a problem in your kitchen too.